Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify, the fast, lean learning machine, the fastest learning, most revenue-generating personalization platform for e-commerce.
Welcome to the e-commerce growth show. As you know, this show is all about helping e-commerce merchants grow. And I've got a little quick story for you. This episode is actually not going to be about customer lifetime value. However, I got my Remington shaver today, my replacement one, which was still in warranty, but the lengthened warranty. It was like 3 or 4 years old. And it just goes to show, really, I mean, I've been die-hard Remington for years, but I had a bit of a wobble in a customer experience sense because when I first rang up, it was like, yeah, no problem. We'll get you a replacement straight in the post. I was like, beauty. And then about a month went by, and I thought, it's COVID, it's lockdown, fair enough. Maybe they're late, whatever. Anyway, so eventually I started ringing them back again. And then I got back to the company, and they started just palming me off. Oh, yeah, we've got this really nice one. It's an award-winning shaver, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, but that's not the one that I need. I need the quick cut one. You're giving me this long thing, which I don't want. Anyway, so it went round the houses for quite a long time. And I was starting to get a bit disappointed, with this brand at this point. And I'd just been saying to my wife like a week or so before, so you know what? These guys are so amazing. There's no way on earth I would ever buy a shaver from anyone else in this world apart from Remington. And then it started to slowly chip away at me. I was like, actually, these guys are letting me down, man. I'm not liking this. Anyway, so eventually I got hold of this supervisor guy. After I spoke to another couple of people, I had to wait ages on the phone and things like that, which is all kind of eroding away this customer service type thing. And eventually get hold of this guy, Adam, who, bless him, he was absolutely amazing. He said, we send a lot of shipments straight out to concession. We don't really have stock. And I don't know whether he was pulling a fast one or not, but I saw through it all and say, look, if you've got stock in your warehouse, surely you've got to have to deal with warranties and things that are out of the normal retailer warranty. So you should be able to get one, right? Or else you've got to give me some kind of refund. I've got to go, I've got to try and get another one. And he was like, I don't know, I'll look into it. Put the phone down. 2 days later, bang, brand new, quick cut shaver, turns up in the post, boom, beautiful. So I can safely say my relationship with that brand has been restored, but it just goes to show from the front line, me in a particular scenario with this shaver, just how important and how quickly things can change in terms of relationship with a brand. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you because I got my shave about half an hour ago and I'm waiting to shave my ridiculously horrible looking beard off. Anyway, so today we're having a bit of an interesting chat about something a little bit different with a guy called Dean Grimshawe. Now, Dean is the Business Development Director for FoundIt. And I think I met Dean for the first time when I was revisiting my partnership with Greenlight Digital. And I didn't know this, but I found it a part of the Greenlight group. And so I met Dean, and they're actually in a similar kind of space as Segmentify in terms of, I won't go into detail because that's Dean's world, but it's a kind of a personalized navigation type tool, which sort of sits in the same sort of world as Segmentify, machine learning and so on. And we had a good old chat, went for a coffee and yarned about all sorts of stuff and had a lot of fun. So I thought it'd be awesome to get Dean on because he's got some fingers in many pies around life coaching, personal development, as well as obviously working as an accomplished business director at FoundIt. And so here he is. Hey, Dean.
Hey, Phil.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. It's funny you saying your story about Remington, actually, because since I think we share the same style of haircut.
Yeah, if you want to put it that way.
I say style, it's not really by choice, but
no, mate.
But how hard has it been to get hold of some hair clippers?
Yeah,
I don't know if there's certain products, like other products you can just get in, it's business as usual. But you mentioning your Remington clippers made me think about getting some clippers for me Barnet. I thought actually, I don't know if there's an area here that's slowing down, but I really had a struggle. So yeah, a bit random, but I just but your little story made me think of that.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm restored now, but I was on the edge,
Yeah, and what you said is absolutely correct. You can get a real good relationship diminish just by not serving the customer, how they're expecting to, and it can change in such a small amount of time, which for our environment is crucial.
Yeah, seriously, I was amazed actually. because it just took that one conversation with a guy that I knew was blagging it. And I thought, what are you doing, mate? You're trying to palm me off with some other pair of clippers that you don't clearly want yourself. So you're trying to palm off to me. I could see through that, and I could see, mate, you don't realize what you're doing right now in terms of your brand reputation. Because Remington, for me, this whole idea of it painting a picture in your head.
Yeah.
It's like Remington, when you say the word to me, Remington, I'm saying they're top of the league. They are the Champions League. They are the Dons. If you want the best, you go Remington, And so amazingly quickly, it starts to erode when you start having parts of your operation not reflect that.
Oh, 100%.
Anyway,
especially when you've got a super fan there starting to question themselves. It's like, oh no, don't mess with your super fans. Look after those boys.
Absolutely, VIPs, man. Anyway, so why don't we start off by sort of telling the guys how you got into e-commerce?
I was working in sales. This is back when I was a Hampshire boy, and I met my now wife, Sarah, and moved to Hertfordshire. And when I first moved to this area, I just came here with no role. This was a fair while back now. And I thought, well, what do I do? And the first job I took was actually in the sort of entertainment industry in a place called Topgolf, where it's like a driving range stroke bowling alley. I don't know if you've ever been to a Topgolf, but there's like little holes. It's like a driving range, and each of the golf balls are chipped. So if you get the ball in the hole, which is up the range, you can get points, and it comes up on your screen almost a bit like a bowling alley. So I was in that environment just because it was convenient. It was the closest one, and like a lot of convenient jobs, I ended up staying there a bit too long. And I thought, well, I need to get back into this sales lark. And I didn't really know how to do it. And I've typically been that kind of guy that things just happen when they need to. So I kind of just quit my job without the next job being ready. And I thought something will come up. Like when I actually put my feet to the fire, things turn up. But I kind of have to make that commitment at that step first. So I quit my job, not knowing what I was going to do next. And it kind of got dangerously close that I really was going to be heading into absolutely nothing. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? So I went around my network. I asked my pals, all the people I knew from my old sales world. I said, do you know anything going? I kind of need to be doing something. So give me a buzz if anything comes up. And weirdly, I went on a holiday to Wales, which is something for me. Whenever I go on holiday to Wales, something happens. I don't know why. I've got I've got absolutely no logic or reason for it. But it just does. So when I'm at a loose end, I go on holiday to Wales because I love the Brecon Beacons. And when I'm walking around the Brecons, something clicks into place. And sure enough, I was doing a waterfall walk and my phone went. And it was a guy who I didn't know who he was, but he'd got my details from a mutual friend and said, I hear you're a salesman and you're at a bit of a loose end. Could you do telesales working from home? I said, well, absolutely I could, So what's the deal? And he said, oh, it's working for this digital agency. They want to do some lead generating campaigns. Finish your holiday. We'll catch up properly and check it out. So long story short, I arranged to meet this guy in Liverpool Street in a coffee shop, literally an hour before the pitch for this new business that I was going to be working for. And not at this stage, I didn't even know how to spell SEO. And if you'd asked me to spell PPC, I'd have had to double checked it. So I was completely new to the digital world. I was completely new to e-commerce, but that's what I was going into. I went into a digital agency, and as it worked out, it was the Greenlight Digital Group. Literally, I left London, got on the train, and I bumped into Warren Cowan, who was the CEO of Greenlight when I first worked at Greenlight, and he's now the CEO of FoundIt, which is a technical arm of the Greenlight Digital Group, and it's the natural evolution of Hydra. So I literally bumped into him on the train. He said, "Oh, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Well, I literally just walked out of a job." Oh, and then the following morning, I was in his office with Chris Dunn, the COO of FoundIt, and he said, "Well, how would you like to try something?" And today I'm the business development director of FoundIt.
Awesome. That sounds great.
So it's quite a weird and wonderful journey, but
no, absolutely. And I know I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I still haven't fully got my head around what FoundIt does technically. I mean, I know, because we've chatted about it along the lines of the personalization space. but it's not the same, is it? It's not about necessarily just on-site personalization. Is it to do with more of the navigational side of where people go on a website when they enter it from a certain SEO standpoint?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I try not to get too hung up on the applications of what FoundIt is. So FoundIt, in its rawest sense, is a data platform which is designed to understand the intent of the customer. So
Right.
Going back on our background, from Greenlight Digital Group, which is predominantly a search-based digital marketing agency, we've got a lot of understanding of the keyword and how it works, and we sort of condensed all that down. And originally, FoundIt was kind of designed to be an SEO product to target the keyword. But in one of those sort of weird pivots, we realised actually, well, instead of chasing the keyword we want to chase, why don't we look primarily at what it is the customer wants? So instead of like chasing the keyword per se, it was like, well, what keyword did the customer put into Google to get into this website? What are they putting into the internal search engines when they're on the site? What is it they're looking for? What are they clicking on? What are the relationships between the products? And from that, we built out, well, I say we, like I did. I'm the sales guy. I didn't build nothing. But yeah, that's it. The FoundIt team built a data platform which is completely designed around understanding the customer intent. So it's done on a page level on the site. What is it the customer wants? And then we work from almost an ideology, really, of if you knew what the customer was looking for, would you lay this page out differently? And then, which touches on what we're kind of known for most, that the core solution is navigation. So if on a given page, we know that the most likely thing they want next is X, Y, and Z, well, wouldn't it be handy if there was an easy way to get to X, Y, and Z from this page? Which is the core of what we do. But, as it transpires, once people understand the data and what's behind it, a lot of new ways of using it come up. And because it's a relatively small, innovative team, there's a lot of agility there with how it can be applied. Deliberately, for a long time, we kind of avoided the personalization space because we can do it. We kind of do it, but it was a very competitive space, and we didn't have a brand in that area. So a lot of our data does definitely overlap into that area of, well, we know what everyone wants, we know all the relationships, so we could and we do create personalization. But the key thing for us is, well, what does the customer want? And that's where the data platform spits out that information. And then it's a case of, right, now we know this, what is the best way to utilize it on the site for maximum bang for buck? Where can you get the most value out of these insights and this information? And
it sounds really interesting. We should probably pick up on it again in another session or something. But obviously we can, if the guys want to get in touch with you about FoundIt, then we can cover that off a bit later on.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, so the other thing we're going to touch on briefly was the other thing that you're really passionate about, which is personal development, life coaching, personal training, that kind of side of things, which is something that I'm very passionate about as well. That kind of ongoing pursuit of self-awareness and emotional intelligence and building great teams and being a great leader. And one of the big things we were talking about earlier was the whole idea about change being something which innately to humanity actually is something that's very difficult typically to handle. As particularly at the moment with COVID and lockdowns and changes in routines and so on. And I mean, even for myself, having gone from a kind of a traveling to London and back role 4 or 5 times a week to suddenly being at home every day, even though I've got my 2 kids and my other half here, I still found that difficult and still am adjusting to the fact that I've got to really build a new routine that replaces what I'd built before, and not particularly loving having to do that. So I suppose the other element we were going to talk about was, how do we embrace change? How along these lines of the personal development side and the life coaching side, bring us to some of that stuff to the table that you've experienced.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So in the noughties, I did study a life coaching qualification. And around about 2010, I took on the personal trainer qualification as well, because personal development and sort of trying to be the best we can be, it's always been a part of me, and something I've just been naturally curious about and naturally wanted to continually study, because it's a massive topic, right? You can spend your lifetime studying it and you can still only touch the sides of what's possible. So And there were periods as well where it was going to be my self-employed business and it was going to be what I was going to do. So I was
Sure.
extremely passionate about it. But
Yeah.
I'm a family man. I've got 4 babies now, and it got to the stage when the first one was born where the wife looks at me and says, "You need to have a nice stable job, a nice stable income." So I kind of parked it as being my full-time employment, but
Yeah.
I never parked personal development. And
No.
I do think, especially in the sales industry and even
Yeah.
people in marketing, when we're dealing with people all the time, personal development and understanding people and understanding, what makes us tick is a massive benefit, really, to A, managing ourselves, but B, getting the most from what we do. So
Yeah.
it's interesting you mentioned that whole point about change, though, because one thing everyone will say that the only constant there is change. And we all know this. We all talk about it. We all mention it. But when it comes to change, people are awful at it. We're just not very good at change,
like it. No.
and innately the body doesn't want anything to change. It doesn't want anything to be different.
Yeah.
But like it, love it or loathe it, change is coming regardless.
Yeah.
Although none of us could have predicted what's happened with COVID-19. So in that respect, change has happened on a scale which, it's probably sped up like 10, 20 years of change in the space of a month.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so people are panicked. Like as soon as you people change their entire routine, there's all this stress levels, and you get a lot of people, saying, "Well, I can't wait for things to go back to normal," which is which is part of the human condition, right? We want routine, we want things to be normal, and it all comes down to our paradigms and our beliefs and the way the mind works, because so much of us and our habits is literally run on autopilot. And then all of a sudden, when you change the entire program, it's like you're trying to trigger all these automated habits, and all of a sudden they're not relevant anymore. Your morning routine of having your shower and then getting ready to work, and getting your suit on. It's like, well, I don't need a suit anymore. Well, do I get a suit on anyway? I don't know. Like and then it's like, well, I had to have my breakfast at this time so I could be at the bus station and get to the train station. But now I don't have to be at the train station anyway. So why am I? I don't know. Everyone, even the most mundane things, all of a sudden scramble the mind because the whole routine's out of sync. And then 9 till 5 becomes, well, I'll start at 8. But I noticed this as well with a lot of colleagues. They were actually working longer because they just weren't sure what to do with themselves. They were getting to their workstation at like 8, finishing at 6, and they was actually working longer days, and they didn't know if it was the right thing to do. They didn't know if it was wrong. They didn't know if they should be working harder, and there was just so much confusion. So personally, like, I'm not immune to it. I'm a human being as well. And when it all kicked off for me, I just went straight back into my own personal development and really deep dived into it to really sort of, I suppose, steady myself. Because like, what's going on here?
So how did you do that? I mean, so tell us. I mean, in terms of handling change better, and what does that mean to go, deep into yourself and stuff from your perspective?
Well, for me, it's always about finding that center line, because one of the things that I became more and more aware of is that we get so involved in our activity that we forget who we are and what we were trying to achieve in the first place, if that makes sense. There's a strength and conditioning coach called Dan John, and I always remember one of his bits of work where he says the key thing is to always keep the goal as the goal, because typically what will happen is you set yourself a goal, you start working towards it, you set milestones, you set micro goals, you set daily goals, weekly goals, daily, hourly goals. And the next thing you know, in the space of all these goals, tasks, milestones, and to-do lists, you've forgotten what you was trying to achieve in the first place. And we see it all the time in things like e-commerce, where they go, right, what's our one goal this year? And they might say, we're going to increase the conversion rate or something like that. And then they go, right, well, to do that, we're going to have to do this, we'll do that, we'll have to focus on this, do that. And next thing you know, they've got like whole processes and plans and roadmaps and all these different milestones and projects and markers and KPIs. Then at the end of the year, someone goes, well, did it increase conversion? Well, I forgot all about that. Like it just sort of goes off in all these different directions. They're all fantastic stuff, but and it's something we're all prone to. We get so involved in the activity, we forget what we're actually trying to do. So and I caught myself fighting for normality, and then I thought, well, what? Forget normality for a second. Well, what is it you actually want? What is it you actually want to achieve? And there's a common thing in coaching, and most life coaches come across the same thing when they're dealing with clients and coachees, as they call them. It's like most people don't get what they want because they don't actually know what they want. So they start flapping and getting all flustered, I guess, about change. But like anything, like when you get caught off track, if you imagine it like a plane that's going between London and New York, and if it sort of gets in turbulence, the key thing is, well, get back to track. You know, if it gets blown off course, you get back to that center line, if that makes sense. And the key thing for me was to readdress myself, well, what is that center line? And you'll find a lot of the reason people flap is because they get blown off course and they're trying to get back to the center line. And the center line, unfortunately, had become all the activity. But the activity wasn't really serving them as an individual or their goals. The activity was just part of life that happened to them, if that makes sense. So now they're finding, well, they can't get back on center track with the activity because you can't leave the house, you can't commute, you can't go to London, you can't do face-to-face. You know, you can't just go and buy that dress in the fashion shop anymore because all the shops are shut. So they're trying to get back on the central line with activity. And it's like, but what is it you actually want? And they go, well, I don't know. You know, well, I've been so busy for so long, busy being busy, I don't know what I want. And I think that's where a lot of the stress, I suppose, for a lot of people came from.
It's very interesting. I mean, if somebody, it's fascinating to hear that, obviously coming from your perspective as somebody who's passionate about life coaching and done it, you know. So, I mean, in terms of like the average person, us guys listening to it, and maybe we are in autopilot, maybe we are doing our everyday stuff and that's been blown off course, and then we're just trying to navigate a new way to sort of do the activity we were doing before in a different way, but that's not really the vision or the goal or whatever. How does one go about, if they're interested in trying to investigate what that goal of their life is?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's very personal to the individual because
of course,
for a lot of people, you know, when you speak to them for the first time, let's assume you're doing a coachee session or something, and I've had this in the past where it's happened to me, and people go, I don't know what my goal is. Now, you can work on it for an hour or two, but don't be surprised if the first time you ask the question, you don't work it out that day. Sometimes there is a bit of a process to it. Sometimes you've really got to dig into it. And the key thing people always start with is, well, what do you enjoy doing? Like, if money wasn't relevant, if you had all the time in the world, what would you do? Like, what would you like to do? Because, and this is another challenge as well, and it's going back to really sort of personal goal achievement. But most people, when you say, what do you want? They're already thinking in terms of the filters of what they think they can achieve, if that makes sense. So they go, well, I'm not going to say I want that because it's not even achievable. It's not possible. So I don't know what I want, if that makes sense. And people have to really dig deep to work out what they want. And it's typically because people are thinking through the filters of what they think is actually achievable.
Right. Interesting. Yes, you were saying about people not necessarily knowing what it is that their goal is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and if you look at e-commerce business, like, we're so ingrained in the one-to-one meetings and the processes, you know, and especially working in sales, you know, if we're not out on the road, what do we actually do, so to speak? And, I don't know if it's going to be a good sales meeting if we're not eyeball to eyeball over a table, because I don't really like doing it on Zoom and I don't like doing this. But that's all looking at it from an activity perspective. The idea is, well, what do we want? Well, we want to create good relationships. We want to, grow the business. We want to get our brand out there, or all the different things. What is it that you want? Like, what was the purpose of the company in the first place? And instead of thinking of it from an activity point of view, just think, well, what do we need to achieve? What were we supposed to achieve? Limitations have changed, but limitations never really block the goal, if that makes sense. It only blocks the old ways of doing things. And
and what about, sorry, go on, mate.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, everything's changed, and you can fight it or you can embrace it. Either way, it's here.
Absolutely.
And we might as well make the most of it, right?
No, completely. I was going to say about when we're talking about goals and visions and the purpose, if you like, behind the activity that's driven from the purpose. What are your thoughts on the kind of importance of general sort of self-awareness around all of this? So that, for example, if you're a leader or you're running a brand or you're running a team or you're not running a team, and you're going into work and you're doing e-commerce and you're doing your marketing, whatever it is, what are your thoughts around the whole pursuit of self-awareness, personality testing, Myers-Briggs, EQI, all that kind of stuff?
Good question. I think awareness is everything, to be honest. Like, you can't rectify a problem that's not a problem, right? And part of the challenge, and I can only speak for myself, but the more my awareness grows, the better I become as a person, because I become more aware of the situation and the things that need addressing. Because let's face it, part of why I got into personal development is because 99.9% of all our lives run on autopilot. And the reason personal development has been such a big thing for me is because I learned a long time ago that I can intellectually understand something and it can do zero to change my life. Because I can understand something in my conscious mind. Like, for instance, I can be told that an activity doesn't serve me, or a behavior doesn't serve me, a personality trait doesn't serve me, a habit doesn't serve me, and it can be explained to me, and I go, do you know what? You're 100% correct. I completely agree, and what you're saying makes absolute sense, and I'm a convert. I'm into it. And then tomorrow I just revert back to my old pattern, because it's our self-image and it's our subconscious which is driving the bus. And that's why I work so hard personally on personal development, because you can't just consciously understand it and expect your life to change. You've got to work on it, and that's why it needs a routine, it needs repetition, it needs all these things, and it needs you to continually focus on what are you trying to achieve, where are you trying to go. Because
agree. And it sounds to me like that's exactly why a coach exists, because I was just about to say to you, you detect the change, or you identify the glass ceiling or whatever it might be, and then, like you say, you've got to work at it. But that requires self-discipline, it requires new routines, and I assume that the beauty of life coaching and this mentoring side of it means that you've got somebody that can hold you accountable, that can help you with your routines and structures, and put regular guidance in place to get you to that goal, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, most coaches will tell you that, they don't give you anything. It all comes from within you. All they're really doing is holding the mirror up so you can see it. Now, I know when I've been coached many a time, people will say to me, like, why do you keep saying this? And I'll be like, I don't know. I don't know what you mean. And they said, well, I've got a notepad here. and you've said this phrase like 28 times, like in the last half hour. Like, why do you keep saying it? And I won't even notice I'm saying it, and it'll be like basically reaffirming some of my limiting beliefs. Something like maybe, oh, well, I can't do that, or that's not me, and that's not the sort of thing I can achieve. And I might not even realize I'm saying it, but the truth is, and it goes back to NLP, when anybody says the words "I am," whatever they say next is extremely powerful. So make a conscious choice to say something positive, because if you say "I am" and then literally verbalize a limitation, it's like, well, that basically is a deep part of your subconscious. And the fact that you'll keep going over that script means it's deep in there, and it's a barrier that you can't overcome until you iron it out. And more times than I care to admit, I've had those barriers and blockages, and I've been completely unaware of them. Like I might like, and using that example with the coach where he says, you've said it X amount of times in the past half hour, I didn't even know I was saying it. Yeah, it physically was coming out of my mouth. And as soon as you've got that awareness, as you pointed out, as soon as you've seen it in the cold light of day, you go, right, that's something I want to rectify. And, there's ways to work these things out. As I sort of touched on just now, you can't just suddenly be conscious of it and you're cured. It does require work and practice. And then, as you also said, that's where the accountability comes in. Because let's face it, like if I don't have to do the press ups, I won't, right? But no one can do my press ups for me.
No one can lose the weight for me, or whatever it is you're looking to try and do.
Well, that's exactly
it.
No,
I mean, it's really interesting stuff, Dean. And I mean, obviously we've chatted top level really about a couple of different themes here. One obviously is the whole kind of FoundIt tech side and how that helps businesses. And then obviously on the other side is what you're also passionate about around personal development and life coaching and so on. I mean, tell the guys if they're interested in either of those things or both, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, well, you find me on LinkedIn. So Dean Grimshawe,
Yeah.
Business Development Director
Yeah.
at FoundIt. FoundIt website is foundit.com, and it's FoundIt all one word. For the website, for the brand, it's FoundIt with an exclamation mark. But obviously, for the purposes of the website, just foundit.com, and there you find out all the the work we've been doing, the people we've been doing work with, and an overview of the data platform itself. In terms of myself, during this process, I've been getting quite back into my personal development and really sharing more content around it. So I put my own blog up, which is deangrimshawe.com, Dean Grimshawe with an E on the end of Grimshawe. I like to think there was a lovely story about the E on the end, but I think I found out a few generations back it was because my family couldn't read or write. So I think a registrar just added the E on, and we weren't clever enough to say it was wrong. There was just like an X in the box. So I'd love to say it's because we're a posh version of Grimshaws, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. But yes, so I've got deangrimshawe.com as the blog, and I've also got a podcast up for Dean Grimshaw's Work in Progress podcast, and Work in Progress being that we're all growing daily, right? All trying to be better than we were yesterday. And I get some sort of fantastic guests on there where they sort of share their pearls and their wisdom, on what they've been doing that works for them.
Excellent. That sounds great. So just to finish off then, what about a couple of, top level tips or tricks or anything like that around personal development that the guys could take away if they're interested in actioning something kind of right now?
Well, I would say start with the end in mind. And if you haven't thought of it already or you don't know it, really think about what you want. Because, depending on what you believe, you've only got one shot. And a lot of people kind of live their life for other people's without realising it, if that makes sense. They do it because, that's what family members think of them, what their parents want them to be, and, what their work colleagues want them to be. But I don't think people spend enough time really thinking about what they actually want. And when I say that to people, I say, well, take away the limitations and the filters of what you think you can and can't do. What is it you actually want? Because the truth is, none of us really know what we're capable of. And we are capable of much more than we realise. But the first thing is, what do you want? And then really get to the understanding that you actually could do it, And now that you know what you want, and now you realise actually you can do it, what would be the first thing you need to do? And it is, and I'd love to say it was really complex and complicated, but the crux of it is that simple. All of the tips and tricks really is just to help people realise that they actually can do it. Whereas a lot of people put these barriers in place. But that's the first thing, really. Know what you want, and not what you should want, not what other people want you to want.
What you really want.
What do you want? And
what do you really
I'll tell you
want?
I'll tell you what I want. What I really, really want. Yeah.
No, don't go there, man. Please don't go there.
But I mean,
you have.
I know. I can't undo it. You can't undo it. But I'd say that if you really do know what you want, though, you're ahead of most people.
For sure.
It's amazing how many people just don't really ask the question or don't think that they're worthy enough to ask the question. And
there we go.
Do it. Ask the question.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks, Dean, so much. Great chat. And thanks, everyone, for listening. There's some interesting stuff in there for sure. We'll have to get you back on, Dean, as well, I think. Well,
thanks for the invite.
Hey, not at all. So it just remains for me to say, if you haven't done so already, please register at segmentify.com/podcast. You'll get all the new podcasts. Obviously, Dean's will be up there, and all the other ones that have been out already if you haven't heard them. And also do get in touch if you want to be on the show, whether you want to be involved in any way, have any questions, or you've got any particular topics you want me to research and talk to people about. And as you know, I'm at phil@segmentify.com. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Dean, again. And I look forward to speaking to you. Yeah, thanks, Dean. And look forward to speaking to you all again soon.
Put us to the test and let us prove we can drive more revenue for you. Sign up for a completely free proof of concept or split test against your current provider, set up and optimized by our team within a few days at segmentify.com/demo.